I'm going to do something a little different today. I have plans to review any number of whiskeys, and in fact I have a video planned, which I may or may not actually do. The farther out the planning goes, the more subject it is to alteration with circumstances. But I have a video planned with the title, "When are you going to review whiskey?" Well, I decided rather than just wait until I get there, as I go through the planned videos explaining things about whiskey, because this is whiskey for beginners, I would intersperse those with whiskey reviews. So today I'm going to have a little taste of Knob Creek Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Now there's going to be a video in just a second. I have allergies. There's going to be a video in the future on how to read a whiskey label. If you don't know what straight whiskey is, bourbon whiskey, all this. I have done videos on what bourbon is, what straight whiskey is. I haven't necessarily uploaded everything I've already, in fact, I definitely haven't uploaded everything I've already done. And I'm going to do a video further on how to read a whiskey label. I'm going to do a video further on how to taste whiskey. But right now, all you need to know is this is Knob Creek Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. If you're interested, it comes from the Jim Beam distillery, but it is so much better than Jim Beam. This is a Glencairn glass. You see some people on YouTube calling it a Glencairn. That's like saying that you're flying on an aeroplane. It's one syllable, Glencairn. Scott would probably say something like Glencairn. But I'm not Scottish, although some of my ancestors were. I'm a Texas boy, and it's Glencairn. Now, if I were pouring the whiskey for my own glass, and not for a video, I would put more in it than that. But that's what it looks like. I would normally fill it to about here, and in fact I got more than I intended to in this glass, and I'm not going to try to drink it all. What I'm going to do is tell you about the whiskey rather than just drink it. And so what's left over when I'm done here, I'll probably put in the infinity bottle that I have, and at some point, if people ask me to do a video on an infinity bottle, I can do that. But I swirl it around, and that not only enables me to look at the legs, which hopefully the camera can pick up something of them. I can't tell from here, which I like to do. The legs really don't tell you anything about the whiskey except how viscous it is, how thick it is, in other words. And it's not ever going to be thick like molasses or syrup or anything like that. But the higher the alcohol content, typically the slower the legs form and the slower they run. And I just like to look at them. But the first step that I'm going to do is to nose the whiskey, and that's just what it sounds like. Honey. Definitely honey coming off of this Knob Creek. There's alcohol there, of course. This is 100 proof whiskey. I don't know if you see it there. Remember, this is a thoroughly amateur production. I don't have the kind of facilities that just about everybody on YouTube does. I have my laptop webcam. That's what I have. And the lighting in the living room. But yeah, going to get alcohol off 100 proof. You're going to get alcohol off of anything that's whiskey. But there's the honey, some kind of candy. It's kind of a butterscotch, caramel, vanilla all mixed in together. There's some kind of a floral note, some kind of flowers in there. I can't discern just what. And I had a nosebleed a couple of days ago, 3 days ago now, and it seems like that might have affected me, or maybe it's my sinuses, my allergies. My right nostril is never very good for nosing whiskey anyway, and all I'm getting is the alcohol up there, and the left nostril seems to have a subdued sensitivity. But it does smell good. That first sip, honey and brown sugar. Good. And I have just woken up as I'm making this video, which is not the best time to drink whiskey if you're going for the taste. And so most people will use water to cleanse the palate. For me, Coke works better. I've already had a drink of it, and we'll see how that does. Because you don't want other flavors interfering with the flavor of whiskey. And by the way, this is not part of the whiskey tasting, and I'll probably repeat it in my How Do You Drink Whiskey video. But this Glencairn, you see it has this thick base, and you can hold it like that and swirl it and drink from it. I've gotten to where I do this, just a gentle grip. But Richard Patterson, I believe he's retired now, but he was the master blender for White and Mackay, a Scottish outfit in Glasgow. And he's a funny guy. And he says, if I ever see you hold it like this, I'll have to kill you. And the reason is, if you're holding it like this, you're warming the whiskey up. Now, as I understand it, I've never had brandy, but you take the brandy glass and you hold it like that and you warm it so the aroma comes off. Whiskey, on the other hand, you don't. You're getting the nose without artificial warming, even from your hand. But it's time for another sip. And in there I was getting a cinnamon note. There's some black pepper. I don't remember the mash bill on this, but I believe it's got a fairly significant portion of rye in it, and rye gives you a spicier whiskey. The higher the rye content in the mash bill, the spicier it tends to be, although I've gotten spice off of wheated bourbons, which don't have any rye in them at all. There's brown sugar in here. There's a nutty note. I can't be sure whether it's pecans or walnuts, but I'm definitely getting something nutty, which to me is characteristic of George Dickel Tennessee whiskey. And I've not said much in the videos I've done thus far about Tennessee whiskey. I consider Tennessee whiskey a subset of bourbon. Others don't, especially in Tennessee. But it filters through charcoal before it goes into the barrel, and to me it filters out a lot of the flavor. Tennessee whiskey proponents say it filters out a lot of the harshness, making it smoother. I don't use smooth to describe whiskey. It seems to be an almost meaningless term. It means whatever the person using it wants it to mean, which means that it really means nothing in terms of whiskey. But George Dickel, number 12 especially, gives me a definite pecan note, and I'm getting notes, or a nut note here. And there are some who say that's characteristic of Jim Beam products, which this is. But I'm not used to getting it from Knob Creek, although I have to admit that this is my first bottle of Knob Creek in a year or so, and the first time I had it, I was brand new to whiskey, so my experience with this particular bourbon is thin, and I'm still learning from it. And before I go in for another sip, I also need to mention I'm getting some oak on the taste here. You'll hear whiskey drinkers say on the palate. What they mean is the taste. They'll say, I'm getting such and such on the nose. That's just what it smells like. And I'll hit this again, at least I plan to, in my How Do You Drink Whiskey video. But if all you want to do is get the effect of the alcohol, just buy Everclear and be done with it. Buy vodka. You can mix whatever you want with it and get the taste of whatever you're putting in the vodka. If you're going to drink whiskey, take your time. Good whiskey is sipping whiskey. Don't do shots. Don't slam it down. Take your time and enjoy it. Yeah, that smells so good. And after I've had a couple of sips, I'm getting a woody note here. And for me, good whiskey is going to have some wood in it. You can get a whiskey that has got so much oak it's undrinkable. And one of these days I may reach that whiskey. I haven't yet. So far I've not found any whiskey which had too much wood in it for me. But overall, this is definitely a buttery, spicy, cinnamony, honey whiskey. And as I say, I'm almost brand new to Knob Creek, but that seems to be my experience of this whiskey. It's got a lot of honey and a lot of butter in it, and these are things that I tend to find in bourbon, but I'm not sure I've found another bourbon which has them so prominently. Now I want to focus on the finish, which is what you might call the aftertaste. Definitely getting spice. There's some honey in there, some butter, and some oak, which is not as strong as I really like to have on the finish. There's a really slight bitterness, almost like when you're eating a pecan or a walnut, and there's just little piece of that inner stuff. I don't even know what you call it, that's in the spaces of the nut, and you accidentally get some of that, and it's bitter. And what I'm getting is something like that. But overall, this is a very good bourbon, much better than I thought it was a year ago when I first tried it. And I have to say that I recommend, if you're new to whiskey, that you try a Knob Creek bourbon. Now, I do need to warn you, as I said earlier, it's 100 proof. Now, that's not really a high proof whiskey, but bourbon and all American whiskey by law can be no less than 80 proof, so it starts at 80. This is 20 proof points higher than that. And most of your basic bourbons anywhere from bottom shelf to the middle of the top shelf are going to be 80 or 90 proof, maybe a little higher. Woodford Reserve is 94 proof, if I remember right. There are bourbons that are 92 proof, 96 proof, what have you. But if you're used to Jim Beam and Jack Daniels, those are 80 proof whiskeys. This is 20 proof points higher. Be careful of it. It doesn't drink like it's high proof, and it's not really high proof, but it's higher proof than the basics. And so you want to be careful when you nose it. Don't scorch your nose. I'll go into this again in how do you taste whiskey, how do you drink whiskey. But take your time in nosing it. Sip it. Don't take a mouthful. Get a sip and savor it. And don't burn yourself with the alcohol. But it's good whiskey. And if you're new to whiskey, I have no hesitation in recommending Knob Creek. But that's it for what I intended to do in this video, which was to review the Knob Creek. And so, as I said, this will go into my infinity bottle, which is getting nearly ready to drink. And in the meantime, if you're liking the channel, subscribe to it. If you're liking, I hate that usage. If you like the channel, subscribe to it. Hit the notifications, hit the like button on this video if you like it. You know, all those things that you're supposed to do on YouTube to prove that you're actually a live human being. I hope that this channel and this video are indeed helpful to you. If you've been drinking whiskey 30 years, this is going to be so basic it's probably not going to interest you. But if you are a beginner in whiskey, you're the person I intend all this for, and I hope it is useful to you.